Hello, everyone. Welcome to the lesson. My name is Liban Galgalo. This course is more focused on the CIS Control, which is the cybersecurity best practice. The subtitle of this lesson is more focused on decision-making tools for IT security. The lesson is for Fortis Technical Community College, but anyone who is watching this on YouTube, you are welcome to learn more in depth of the CIS control. Let's get into it. If you wasn't registered for the class, please register with this barcode and just scan and register for the class. If you already registered for the class, and welcome to the class. The first thing that we are focused on is decision making in IT and cybersecurity. As the cybersecurity or the security concern with the digital world is kind of rocking, the decision making is really critical that come under consideration. Understanding the structure of the different type of framework and effective decision making in cybersecurity is very essential. Why is that? If there's no right tools that the IT professionals or cybersecurity professionals use to protect the company resource, it will be hard. So because of that, there should be the right tools that put in place in order to get right into protecting the company resource. So the first thing that we are focused on the introduction, decision making in IT and cybersecurity involve selecting the best action to protect system and management. That's the first step. It also the balance of the requirement, security, the cost compliance, and usability. That means there's no one single decision that's just made and then it's good to go. There should be different stakeholders who involved into what type of framework, what the cost it will take, and that should be the discussion between the management team. Framework like CIS Control and NIST, CS cybersecurity framework ensure the consistent and reduce the reactive choice. So instead of taking time, instead of just hoping there's nothing happen, it's better to act first. That's why it's better to choose the right framework. So what you are going to learn through this lesson. By the end of this section, I will hope that you guys understanding different definition of making IT, differentiate between strategic, tactic, and operational decision. Because there's different type of decision. When we take decision, there's no single way to do it. Identify the factor influencing IT and cybersecurity decision is one of the focus of this lesson. So please follow up. And if you already register, you also can able to read through the canvas. If it's not, stay tuned. So what the definition of making decision making in IT, like we already touched in the first couple slide, is the process of selecting the best course of action among alternative. Because there's so many different framework out there, there should be the right decision making in order to pick the right which is work for the company. It depends on how, the size of company. Either the company is very small company or it's just a school or the big company. It depends. That's why they have to take the right decision with the right framework. It also involves analyzing data, assessment, risk, and aligning action with the business goal. It's not, again, this decision should be the different stakeholder need to be involved. And then based on that, they have to make the right decision. So how the decision making is relevant to cybersecurity. As there's the threat evolving around all the time, right decision of taking the right control will prevent that kind of threat in the first place instead of reaction or reactivating. So that's why it need to be proactive. It's also helping the decision making, like implication of compliance, data protection, and reputation. If the company doesn't really use the right mindset and pick the right control that apply to them, they will reliable for paying some fee, depend on the regulation that they violated. It also requires the structured reasoning for the risk acceptance, avoidance, transfer, or mitigation. This is all the process or the step of taking the risk response. So that will help the company to what we're supposed to do. Because if they prepare in advance, that will be useful and then easier to take the right action. Type of decision in cyber security. Like we already mentioned in the goal, there's three main type of decision. The first one is strategic, which is long term, and the second one is the tactic, which is medium term, and operational, which is daily management. So why all combination of this thing is really important? If you just based on long term and then you don't really know what's going on daily base, that will be the issue. That is why all these three is combined together in order to make sure the company is stay secure. What kind of factor that influence the decision making? Like we already touched a couple of it. The first thing is the risk and threat landscape. If there's high risk and threat out there, the company may act very quick. If they feel like, oh, there's no that risk that related to this issue, we don't really have to take any decision or we don't really have to take any action because the cost is related. Maybe the people prefer to not pay high amounts of money for something which is not really affecting their company. It also may be related to compliance and regulation. Even though the company don't really want to pay the money, and if the compliance or regulation is enforced, they will have to take that action. The good example of that is, let's say, HIPAA. If the company deal with the health information, they have no choice unless otherwise they will get regulation fee. Because of that, they have to comply with HIPAA regulation. The other example of that is the credit card. If the company deal with the credit card, they have to follow the regulation of PCI. As maybe it depends on the business objective, what the company really want to get out of their business. Their goal is to make sure their business is not shut down. That will influence them. The cost and the resource is the main affection that can prevent the people or the company from enforcing the regulations. Or if they have enough resource, they will very likely to go for whatever way of securing their company. Technology trend is another issue. If the technology is advancing, the company technology is really backward, they have to act quickly and then they have to manage their uh, technology. Or maybe they don't really have access to that, and that will maybe affect their decision as well. Human factor, the knowledge of the technology itself is require the challenge to the decision making, or if there are really enough resource of human factors, that will also make another decision challenge. So there's different type of organizational the framework that organization can based on or they can choose from. But for this lesson, we are more focused on the Center for Internet Security Control, which is CIS. But all this control is not stand alone. It will work with another control. Specifically, NIST cybersecurity framework is one of the framework that hand to hand work with the CIS. So all the other framework is depend on what the company really want. It will be one of the framework that the company can choose from. There's no way of saying that like, oh, this is better than the other one, that is better than the other one. It depends on what the company really want to secure or what is their goal. So the main reason why we are focused on Center for Internet Security, which is the CIS control, is it's kind of simple and then it's way of like easier way of working for different level of the company. It doesn't really have to like just only for one level of company. So we will look that in detail and then hopefully we'll discuss very well. So the importance of structured decision making. When there's the decision, it should be like a structured way instead of just like saying. The first thing is align security with the business goal. What is the goal of the business and how to secure to make sure the business continuity. So that's why it should be aligned with the business goal. Second, it should be reduce the reliance on intuition or bias. That should be really focused on the reality instead of bias. Ensure consistency across all teams. If they structure the decision, it avoid any type of bias, it avoid, and then it makes sure that the consistency across all the team instead of just one team is motivated and then they implement it, the other team is still using different things. So that's why it should be structured. Lastly, it will improve the crisis management and communication. If they use the right structured decision making and all the stakeholder involved, that is shared equally with all team. So what are CIS control? As we already see, CIS is stand for the Center for Internet Security. It has the total of 18 prioritized best practice for preventing, detecting, and responding to the cybersecurity attack controls. This is developed by the collaborative by industry and the government because it's very much different sector. They come together and kind of the volunteering or non-profit organization. They develop that, which provide the practical roadmap to strengthen the cybersecurity posture. So what is the purpose of CIS control? The first one is it answer if I can only do a few things to secure my organization, what should I do first? Which means it just focus on it is start from very little and then go up. That's what we're going to look into. Second, it identify asset. That's one important of that. That's the main focus of the CIS control. It apply layered defense, layer by layer. They continuously monitor and the response. That's another focus of the CIS control. So what are the implementation group or how CIS is actually implemented? There's three different type of CIS control. The first one is IG1, which is very basic. The second one is IG2, which is more modern or moderated or like kind of middle. foundational. And the third one is the organizational or is high level, which is mostly for enterprise. This level is depend on what kind of company can able to use. The small company, middle company, big company. Each group match the organizational size, resource, and the threat exposure. That's why it's really important and it's really outstanding. So the first one that we look into here is the basic cyber hygienes. If the small company, the good example of that one is just a school or a small business or local government can use IG1 where we are, what we are doing, so how we are safe. That's the very basic thing. That's why it's the cyber hygienes. That's what it's focus on. G IG1 in practice, for example, the school, they can look for inventory all device. Let's say this one is control one because there's 18 control. So for each control, there is some number of control IG1 and some of it there is not in there, but the total, there's the total of 56 control or safeguard for IG1. So we will look into that in another example, but it could be more focused on inventory or enforce user specific login or cybersecurity awareness training, which is one of that control, which is 14, control 14, or remove an approved app, control 2, that's more focused on the software, and then control 3, which is focused on encrypt in student data, which is control 3, and filter phishing email, that's control 9. So it comes from different control, and the company can pick, hey, this is what we follow, this is the framework that we can put in place. That is just general example, but that doesn't mean like you have to follow this because it depends on the company, they can choose more than the control. So the key takeaway from IG1 is it provides the minimum viable defense, the very minimum, affordable and high impact control. As we see it, the first, maybe the simple thing that it's focused on phishing. The phishing is one of the way the hacker can able to trick the employee. If the employee doesn't have that kind of awareness, the small company can easy to affect it. So that's why it doesn't really need that much cost to pay for it. They just adopt that control, and then they have to aware of the phishing practice, and then they have to protect themselves. Mitigate up to 80% of common attack. Think about it. Instead of the company doesn't have anything in place, but if they at least put IG1 in place, that will protect the company 80% of the common attack. Service as the starting point for IG2 and IG3. If the company doesn't have any IG1 control, and then they say, oh, we have IG2, that never happened because IG1 is already including IG2 is already including IG1. Everything what is in IG1 actually included in IG2. So the same is true. IG3 is already include IG1 and IG2. So like there's no ways to say, oh, we don't really worry about IG1. We just want to implement IG3. That's never happened because it should be include everything. So very much as we already mentioned, like IG2 is foundational instead of like just the basic. It's for organization with moderate complexity and dedicated IT staff. They have their own IT staff, and the focus is more on feasibility and monitoring. So they have like something going on, the IT check, like they also put the policy formalization, incident detection, and response. So that's why they are more structured instead of like just IG1, which is as simple as maybe as small as running by one or two, three computer. IG2 in practice, the company example is they might asset discovery tools, which is control one, or centralized patch management, which is control seven, or SIEM for log analyze, which is control 8, and network segmentation, which is control 12, and defender security assessment, which is control 15. So that is the different control again come together, but that doesn't mean like this is the only thing they have to pick. Depending on the company preferral, they can select from control 1 up to 8. Between this, they can pick whatever is applied to their company. So what the difference between IG1 and IG2? The first thing is staff. Generally, IT versus dedicated security. So IG2, they have the IT department, they have their own team, IT team that can able to detect or can able to respond if there's any issue. The complexity is simple versus multi-department because IG2 can apply to different department. They have more. The threat opportunity versus the target. So that's another factor that differentiate between them. They focus prevention versus detection and response. So that's more what the IG2 focus on. They can respond, but in IG1, it's more just prevent everything. If there's something issue happen, maybe they have to reach out to the third party or some other organization. They don't have their dedicated IT team. Tools, manual versus automated, because the IG1 is not that advanced. IG2 is more advanced than IG1. All right, moving to IG3, which is organizational, or this is enterprise level implementation, which designated for large enterprise and critical infrastructure. That's where more focus on, which is automation, threat intelligence, continuous improvement, or which require dedicated SOC and mature governance, which is very much high level. So what kind of example of that? It could be like the big university can able to use this scenario, which is SOC with SIEM integration or data loss prevention and patch automation, red team exercise for resiliency, which is to make sure that they are preparing for any kind of cyber attack, threat intelligence integration. So that's really big and high level. So what the benefit of using all this control is, the first thing is that it's prioritized, which is the prioritized focus. It doesn't focus on everything. It should be prioritized one over another. The framework alignment, like NIST, ISO 27001 or PCI, like I already mentioned, depend on the company goal and the company compliance to regulation. They will align with all these different framework. The measurable and auditable, that's another way, or the scalable and adaptable, like we already see it. The company don't really have to adapt all the process. They can just pick maybe as simple as IG1, they're good to go. The community driven and update. It's not like the private sector who run this thing, as mostly the the community involved in it, and then more about the volunteering people who come together and build this framework is way far from bias. So the example scenario, just CIS in a school, the small district adopt IG1 control, like we already see example in under all section, asset inventory, secure configuration, account management, email protection, or staff training is all different concept that it can be picked from the listed control, and then the school can able to protect their data. In conclusion, for this presentation, the decision making drives cybersecurity success. If the company use structured decision making, it will really make the good decision, and that will prevent any kind of, it can be reduce any kind of the threat. Structure framework, it improve outcome like we already said, and start small with IG1 and that can be scaled up to IG3, which is enterprise level. Data driven and consistent decision build resiliency. So this is very much overall what the structure of CIS control look like, but I want to share couple other demonstration. This is the current CIS control, which is version 8.1 implementation group. Like we already see, this is IG one, which has the total of 56, and IG2 is the total of 74. That means it's including this one as well. So it's not separate. And the IG3 has 23 control, which is not included in here or included in here. That is like different. But if we added up this together, it become 153. That's the total. So that's the total number. So how we know which one is which? So if the company pick not if the company pick control one, they know which one is already including IG1. So like we see here, the first one, there's the number of the safeguard. So like that one, that two is that the safeguard. And like we see here, control one, the first one is the first safeguard is applied to IG1, and the second one is applied to IG1, and anything that applied to IG1 is also applied to all the other IG, and the rest is not applied to IG1. That's how we know the number, even though we have different safeguard under one single control, but it doesn't mean like it applied to all implementation. So that's exactly how to do. And finally, the total of 8 control that we have here, it has the total of different number of safeguard that if we add it up, it become 153. This is something I want to show as the demonstration. So how we can able to put all that together and use for the risk assessment. So this form is one of the form that I used to use for risk assessment. There's no data that indicating any specific company that we are going to use, but I can show here that the enterprise name, let's say I want to use this one for A, and their scope is maybe including B, and the last completed date is like today, which is 12, 15, 12, 2020, like that. So what we have here is this is, first of all, we just use only IG1 controls. So IG1 controls, this is the control, the safeguard controls that already apply to IG1. We already picked that. So like this is just good to go. Up here, we have CIS safeguard title, like IG 1.1 is establish and maintain the detailed enterprise asset inventory. But what we have here is the next CISP security function. There's 5 different functions in NIST cybersecurity framework. So there's detect, identify, protect, recover, and response. So how that is aligned with the CIS safeguard title and the CIS safeguard number. So depend on what they say, that is applied to like, okay, so CIS Control 1 said establish and maintain the detailed enterprise asset inventory. That means it's identify. If the company establish and maintain the detailed enterprise asset inventory, that is called identify. But what asset class is that? Since they are talking about asset inventory, that's device. Address unauthorized asset is still that is response because if there's an asset that find which is unauthorized, that is response. The company need to be response. That is still under asset. So based on what the company do with this control, safeguard maturity score is going to be given. Okay, so whoever access this risk, they have to decide, hey, you have to give that risk. So let's say, oh, you know what? We are going to give them 2. So if we give them 2, it's still the risk score is 4 because we are not going to calculate the risk score. Risk score is calculated by itself, kind of automatic. Because if we change this to 4, 3, it's still like risk score is not changing. Okay, what about when we say 4 now? Is it still going to be? No, it's going to be down as they are the safeguard maturity score is going up, the risk score is going down. So that's how the company know if they are doing well with one control, their risk is going down, their safeguard maturity is go up. So this is very much the risk description and safeguard. So if you are not familiar with the concept, you have to read this in detail and then you understand the risk treatment safeguard description, and that's how you can able to contact the risk assessment. But this is just general form, but you can formulate it whatever way you like, and then that will be represent what your framework and what's the goal, why you do the risk assessment. That's all. If you guys already registered for the class, and thank you so much. If you didn't, please register for the class and study more in depth. Thank you.